Hello, everyone. Good morning if it's morning, and good afternoon if you're watching this and it is the afternoon. My name is Megan Geyser, and I am the special education consulting teacher at Quincy Elementary and Scott Dual Language Elementary. This is my second year in Topeka Public Schools and my 11th year teaching and working within special education. And for this school year, I will be adding another layer to my role as the special education literacy consulting teacher to support all of you throughout the school year with your literacy reading needs, concerns, questions. So that means I'll be your go-to person to answer any questions that you have in regards to the reading curriculum available, identifying what curriculum is best for students, etc. I'm really looking forward to this new role. I love teaching reading, and I love to learn about reading and how students best learn reading. So I'm really looking forward to meeting everybody this school year, and hopefully we can do that in person. Cross our fingers. So today we will be reviewing and diving into two of the special education reading intervention programs available in our district, and they are Reading Mastery and Corrective Reading. Okay, so within Topeka Public Schools, we have an emphasis on visible learning, and I'm sure you guys have learned quite a bit about that in different sessions that you have attended. So our learning intentions today are that you will demonstrate an understanding of how to place, teach, and assess students using reading mastery and/or corrective reading for the school year. And you know you are successful when you can confidently implement and teach reading mastery and/or corrective reading. You can appropriately and accurately place students in lessons or strands, and you can assess and monitor students' individual progress and identify growth. And then if they're not growing, what are you going to do, and how do we solve that problem? So now we have our parking lot, and the parking lot is a place where you can go. Oh, you know what? I think I may have gone out of our PowerPoint. I'm sorry. We'll get that back up for you. Sorry about that, guys. Okay. Okay, so like I was saying, this is our parking lot, and I'm going to have a copy of the PowerPoint within our Google Drive that you guys should have access to. And my thought is that as you're going through this presentation, that is a place that you can put your questions, concerns, comments, and then everybody can access that, and everybody can look at the questions and see if there are common ones, and then I can address those questions that you may have. Or we might have somebody in our group that has used either curriculum before, and maybe they have a little tidbit of knowledge or what worked for them, and please feel free to add that. We are a team, and we want to gather as much information from each other. So we're going to go ahead and jump right in. We're going to start with reading mastery. And what exactly is reading mastery? Reading Mastery is a complete basal reading program that uses the direct instruction method to assist students to master essential decoding and comprehension skills. It places particular emphasis on teaching thinking skills and helping students build and acquire background knowledge. Now, this is something that I find really cool about the program, that emphasis on teaching thinking skills and helping them build and acquire background knowledge. We know that background knowledge is so important for beginning readers, and being able to have a depth of background knowledge just helps them with their comprehension, decoding, accuracy. But that thinking skill component, you don't see that as much in other programs, and that's really what makes Reading Mastery stand out in that regard. So reading mastery, what it is continued, because there's quite a bit to it. I couldn't put it all on one slide. So as I said, it is a direct instruction program, but it is designed to provide explicit, systematic structure in English language reading. The program begins by teaching phonemic awareness and sound letter correspondence. Then the program moves into word and passage reading, vocabulary development, comprehension, and building oral reading fluency. Later, lessons continue to emphasize accurate and fluent decoding while teaching students the skills necessary to read, comprehend, and to learn from expository texts. All right, so who exactly is Reading Mastery for? The Reading Mastery program is for students from kindergarten to grade 5. It was actually designed for students who are reading below, at, or even above grade level, meaning that all would benefit from using Reading Mastery. While it can be used in a general education setting, it can also be used with students in special education, specifically those with learning disabilities, as well as English language learners. So we know that it can work in the general education, remedial learners, and then students who are identified. But for Topeka Public Schools, we use this as one of our special education intervention programs for reading. So within Reading Mastery, there are 3 strands that they use, and like I kind of see them as routes, roadways. So the 3 strands are language arts strand, reading strand, and literature strand. And in the next slides, we're going to go into a little bit more detail about what do each of the strands mean, and what does it look like, what does a lesson look like. So we're going to dive right into those. Okay, we're going to start with the language arts strand. And the language arts strand teaches oral language skills necessary to understand what is spoken, written, and read in the classroom. This strand helps students communicate ideas and information effectively. It develops the ability to use writing strategies and writing processes successfully. And when I was going through all of this, I like to see it, and I like to see examples. So I'm going to break down what the language strand looks like, not in each grade because some of them are clumped together, but just to give you an idea of what does language look like in kindergarten versus our 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade students. So starting in grade K, kindergarten, students learn the important background information, vocabulary, and thinking skills they need to achieve high levels of comprehension. So in language arts strand in kindergarten, students will learn vocabulary words commonly used in school, engage in talking and answering questions, use different sentence forms and structures. So let's go ahead and sneak and peek at a language arts lesson, just so you have that example. And let me change my screen share. Oh, it did already. Beautiful. Okay, so this is a kindergarten language arts lesson, and you can see here it is lesson 75, so be mindful that that's pretty far into the program, but you can see what level they're working at with a language arts kindergarten. Everything that you see in blue is what the teacher is to say out loud. It's very scripted. This is the teacher guide, and it's fairly large because there are moments, and I'll show you here later, where you actually show students pictures, letters, and it's the interactive component, and it's all within that teacher guide. So you have exercise 1, and then it tells you what are we working on, the actions, verb tense, pronouns. So the teacher would say, it's time for some actions. Everybody point to the wall. And then there are signals built in to Reading Mastery that you teach your students so they understand what they mean. And there's a signal for no talking. There's a signal to show students it's time to participate. And I think really building that, the signal component helps with behavior management. Students know what to expect. It's really cool to see it in action. So you start with, what are you doing? And you signal, and students should be pointing to the wall. Everybody point to a window. What are you doing? And you can see how it is very, I don't want to say basic because some students need this level of language arts and vocabulary, following directions. And then you go into exercise 2, and you're talking about things that are made of wood. And you can call on students. And then here's the piece where it goes into the pictures. So you show this to students, and you can see we're going to talk about clothing. And the teacher points to item A. This is not clothing. Points to item B. This is clothing. And then the lesson continues. Then it has how you do error correction here. And you can see how building in positive reinforcement and the CI3T ticket system would be really easy to implement into this, giving students positive praise with the CI3T ticket and specific praise. And the lesson continues on. We have lots of pictures here, and again, it's all still scripted, the teacher says in the blue. And this one, it does seem long, but there are a lot of images that you're using. So it continues through, we're on lesson 7 now, or exercise 7, I'm sorry, misspoke. Exercise 8, you're doing part whole. Still on exercise 8. And here we are at the end of our lesson. And there is a workbook component here. And so that's where you would bring out the students' workbooks that they each have individually, and you complete this component. Okay? Ooh. Oh man, okay. Technology, we love it. All right, let's continue on. So that was the kindergarten language arts strand. So as students progress into grade 1, specific activities are added to integrate language arts with other very important reading skills, including continued vocabulary development, instruction that focuses on elements of story grammar, sentence construction, cooperative story writing. In grades 2nd through 5th, the language arts strands provides the structure and challenging materials that allow students to communicate effectively in writing and critique the writing of others. Students learn to write stories with a clear beginning, middle, and end, maintain focus on a single idea and develop supporting details, edit for standard use of grammar usage mechanics, analyze persuasive text, and develop skills related to real-world tasks. So this is like orally listening and taking notes. So let's check out an example of a strand. Whoops. Well, maybe. Oh no, it's too far down. Hang on one second. I'm going to get that going for us. Okay. Okay, sorry about that, everybody. So here's an example of a 3rd grade language arts strand. And again, you can see the example is lesson 17. And the format does look quite different from that kindergarten language arts strand. And here we have objectives to start, and it tells you when you will see those, what exercise the objectives will be found. And we have exercise 2, 3, 4, etc. So here you're going to start with your workbook for exercise 1, and you're going to get feedback from the previous lesson. And then you run right into exercise 2, which is focusing on editing. So you're working in your work, the students are working in the workbook and you're guiding them. And again, it's the same process. Everything in blue, the teacher reads out loud. It is very scripted. And the lesson continues. We have an exercise 3, apostrophe plus S, lined paper with the textbook. And this is what the textbook would, for students looks like. And you can see what it says. Let's see if you can figure out what must happen in the middle picture by comparing picture 1 and picture 3. Touch the candle in picture 1. Who can tell about the candle in picture 1? Then you call on a student and they answer what is happening in the picture with the candle. And then, the candle is falling. Touch the candle in picture 3. Where is the candle in picture 3? And you're just helping students build the comprehension, looking at those pictures, and then together you're going to develop what they think is happening in picture 2. Okay. And then that is the end of the lesson. So this one has 7 exercises, I believe. Yes, writing a paragraph, no numbers, and it is quite different than the kindergarten language arts, but you can see how they build on each other. I had to get out of it to click on that last link. Didn't know it was covered up. All right, so that is it for the language arts strand. We're going to now move into our, oh no. We're now going to move into the reading strand. And the reading strand addresses all 5 essential components of reading, which are phonemic awareness, phonics and word analysis, fluency, vocabulary, and comprehension. The reading strand provides spelling instruction to enable students to make the connection between decoding and spelling patterns, which is really important because if a student is able to decode a word, we want them to do the opposite when they're spelling, to be able to sound it out, identify what letters make that sound to spell the word correctly. So I think that's really important that they're doing both components of that. The reading strand also helps students develop decoding and word recognition skills. So what does that look like for each grade? Well, in grades kindergarten and first, it is designed to teach students skills needed to become accurate and fluent readers. And this is done by decoding. It is taught explicitly and systematically. Numerous opportunities for building fluency, allowing students to focus on the meaning of text. And at this kindergarten and first grade level, comprehension and instruction begins early. There's an emphasis on that as well. So let's take a look at what the reading strand lesson plan looks like at the kindergarten level. That's when I have to flip it. Okay. And again, I want to remind everybody that this is lesson 108 for kindergarten, so it's pretty far into the program and what is expected at the kindergarten level. So you're going to start with exercise 1, which is focusing on sounds. And it tells you what you're working on. You're teaching the P as in pat. And again, it tells you exactly what to do. Blue is what you say out loud as a teacher. So you point to the letter P on the guide. And this is, you're showing it to students, you're holding it up, and here's a new sound. It's a quick sound. My turn. And then it tells you exactly what to do. And as you can see, the letters are quite different in reading mastery and how they are made. They teach students to identify, like the long O with the straight line above it says O. And then SH over here is connected because it's a digraph, 2 letters, but they make one sound together. So that's why they're connected. So they give students these little quote unquote hints. And eventually as the program continues, those go away and the letters are shown in a traditional graphic. Sorry, I don't know that word right off the top of my head. But initially they are shown this way. And that's just to help students identify and make that connection between the sounds. And they are taught the reason why they have the line above the O for the O, long O sound. Initially, it is different when you are teaching and we're used to seeing the letters in the traditional way. So this is just another way for students to make that connection between the sounds. So we have exercise 1, exercise 2, and it's individual tests where you call on students to identify just the letter P. And then exercise 3, you're going to flip it where you point to the letter and the students are to say the sound. Exercise 4, an individual test again, call on students to identify. So it goes back and forth to teacher-led, and then students are asked to complete it. And the thing I like is how great would this be for a very quick and formal assessment? If you have a small group in front of you and you call on student A and they know it, you can just put a little check mark on a sticky note. If you call on student B and they don't know it, okay, we need to work on that more. Very quick and formal assessment right there. Oh, I guess exercise 5 is up here. And then we go into exercise 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12 are all on here. And another thing I really like about this, it teaches students go left to right, and you're pointing underneath the text up there and you're scanning across, and students will pick that up and do that as well. So this is what the reading strand looks like at the kindergarten level. And in exercise 20 through 23, they have a storybook that they will be reading together. And it tells you, like, open your book on page 37. So you can see where that phonics component and the decoding come together here, and the comprehension. And this is a kindergarten level. How quickly they're getting into that. I love that. Eyes on text and working. And then at the end, we have a worksheet, and you can do an independent activity. And I think that this would be really great for your progress monitoring. When you have independent activity time, you can have one student come to the side and you can do some progress monitoring with them throughout the week. Okay, let's jump on back to our slideshow here. So the reading strand, when students go into grades 2nd and 3rd, it continues to emphasize accurate and fluent decoding. The primary focus at these levels is to teach students how to read to learn. And students are taught the skills necessary to read, comprehend, and learn from informational text. And they are taught background information needed for content area, reading through information passages. So let's take a peek at an example of a reading strand lesson for 3rd grade. Okay, exercise 1, you're jumping right into vocabulary. And you ask students, they're in a textbook now. So the kindergarten lesson, they had their storybook, and now students are into textbooks. And you ask them, touch sentence 4. Oh, there's a new vocabulary word in this sentence. It says, and then you read that aloud, and you have students close your eyes and say the sentence. And then I think that closing of your eyes and making that comprehension, getting that story in your head is really important. And then you go into exercise 2 and you read the words. You have the different columns. Oh, and another thing that I really, really like about Reading Mastery, as you can see over here, we have facts about clouds. They have integrated a lot of science and social studies information into the text to bridge the two subjects together. And I think that's it's fantastic, because we have a number of students that science and social studies is their thing, and being able to have the two together, students are more likely to be engaged, and it's a topic that they enjoy. So we set a story background. Another thing I really like on the example here, they have what the text is for the students while you're reading along, and then you have what your script is to say to them. And it continues where you're reading together for this 3rd grade lesson. And then you have the end of lesson activities. You have independent work time, work check, spelling, and then activities. All right, so that's what that 3rd grade lesson looks like. So the reading strand in grades 4 and 5, the focus here is on literature. So when students get into grades 4 and 5 of the reading strand, they are taught to analyze and interpret literature. They read a variety of text, including short stories, myths, folk tales, biographies, and factual articles. And students learn new comprehension skills for interpreting all these types of literature. All right, and that takes us to our final strand, which is the literature strand. And this strand exposes students to different types of text in order to build their vocabulary. As you can see, there's a little asterisk. I have that throughout the presentation for this literature strand. I just want to let you guys know, I'm not going to go into great detail here, because we at Topeka Public Schools, we don't actually have the literature strand. Oh, I'm so sorry, excuse me. We don't have the literature strand purchased and readily available. But I wanted to let you know that there is a third strand and what that means, but we're not going to go into that detail like we did for the language arts and the reading strand, because those are the two that we do have in our school district. So now you may be asking yourself, well, how do I know where students should start, or what strand do they begin in, or where do I put them? Where do I place them? Well, for the most part, our students probably will be placed within the reading strand. You could see the difference with the lessons and what the focus is on the reading strand versus that language arts strand. So primarily our students will be going reading strand. However, there may be a handful of students who will be placed in the language arts strand. And this is typically for those kindergarten kiddos that come to us and maybe they haven't had a preschool experience, they don't know letters, sounds. I also see it as kind of like, how do you do school? You know, those students that just need that extra teaching on how to follow directions, how to sit. You know, some of that was just pointing to a window. That's compliance. So there are students that would benefit from that language arts strand. And in addition, we have our intensive instruction classrooms, or IIC classrooms, and there are students in there that are using the language arts strand for their reading instruction throughout the kindergarten through 5th grade, and it is perfect for them, and it is what they need as well. So just look at your students, and once you get to know them, you'll have a good idea of language arts, reading, and look at their IEP goals. Look at their reading goal. Are we working on letter sounds, letter names, decoding? It's probably a reading strand. Are we looking at identifying common pictures? It's probably going to be a language arts strand. So below this, I have links to examples of various placement tests, and we're just going to check them out just so you, sorry guys, just so we can see an example of what our placement test looks like for reading, the reading strands, and then I went ahead and put the language arts placement test just so you guys can see that as well. And I'm sticking with my kindergarten, 3rd grade. I thought that would be a kind of a nice scope of the little itty bitties in our buildings and then like our middle-ish grades. So let's look at our reading placement test for kindergarten. Okay, I really like the placement tests. They are very user-friendly. You have it broken down again. It's the same format as the lesson plans. So you have part 1, exercise 1, total points, or I'm sorry, total possible is 2 points here. And you're going to present this side to the students, and you as the teacher, pardon my scrolling fast, you as the teacher have the scoring card in front of you, and it shows you just circle 1 point or 2 points if the student answers correctly. Easy peasy. So you go through this, and again, the words that are in blue are the words that you say out loud. So we're going to say some sounds. You have your test items. If anybody has done Dibbles or Ames Web, it's very similar where your test items are up in the box at the top. So say, oh, well, where is the, and the student says it. Say D, and the student says it. And as you continue, at the bottom, we have a placement here. And it tells you if students make 0 to 14 points on part 1, begin with reading mastery, grade K, lesson 1. If students make 15 to 18 points on part 1, you're going to begin with grade K, reading mastery, lesson 11. Children who make 19 to 20 points should proceed to part 2. And I just like that it's very, okay, this to this is what you're going to do. This to this is what you're going to do. So that's an example of our kindergarten reading strand. Now let's check out that 3rd grade reading strand example. Placement example. And it has, as you know, information on how to give this test. and it tells you what page to use and information. And part 1 is individual. It's just very, very easy to know exactly what you need to do. So you have your instructions for part 1. And let me show you what the students will receive on this one while they take this test. So this is what the student is looking at while you give them the placement test. We have part 1 here, and then it goes to part 2. And I just found out myself pointing to the screen and you guys can't see that. Then we have part 1 and part 2, and it is scripted on what you tell the students to do for each part. Instructions are here for part 1, and then we have instructions for part 2. Now, here's our placement criteria in the box. So if a student makes 7 errors or more on part 1 or 3 errors or more on part 2, we're going to place them at Reading Mastery Signature Edition Grade 3. And then again, if a student makes no more than 6 errors on part 1 and no more than 2, we're going to go with Reading Mastery Grade 3 Level 1. Okay? And I also wanted to go ahead and show you guys a language arts placement for kindergarten and what that looks like. And again, it tells you before you give this test, how to give it, and determining the starting lesson. So it goes ahead and tells you if children score 6 or more errors in part 1, begin at lesson 1 for kindergarten language arts. If they score 4 or more errors, begin at lesson 11, and so on. And this is what the language arts placement test is at the kindergarten level. Show me your nose, and they point to their nose. Show me your head, point to your head. And the teacher has a test scoring sheet right here. Okay? So, what does a lesson look like in Reading Mastery? Typically, a Reading Mastery lesson is about 30 to 45 minutes in length. Students are engaged with 7 to 9 short activities within each lesson, which you guys saw with those examples that I showed you. And materials for students, they have storybooks, textbooks, and test books. So we're going to check out a video that was made. It's kind of dated now. I think it was probably in the early to mid 2000s, but it just has a nice overview of the program. It begins with some sounds, and you guys might think it's kind of like, okay, yeah, we know how to make the sounds that we have in our language. But then it goes into the signals and just a nice overview of the program and how it works with students. So let's give this a watch.
Before you enter your classroom for the first lesson, there are some important skills you need to have under your belt. This video will review these skills and prepare you for the next segment, Practice Junction.
See if you can say all these sounds without making a mistake. Get ready.
English is made up of about 40 sounds or phonemes. Teachers need to know how to pronounce all the sounds from the outset and how to blend these sounds together. There are 2 kinds of sounds. There are continuous sounds like these, which must be held for 2 seconds. Then there are quick or stop sounds. If you try to hold a quick sound, you will distort it. Try. This is why quick sounds have to be said quickly.
On. Do it with me.
Next, you need to know how to blend both kinds of sounds into words.
She. Get ready?
When blending continuous sounds together, it's crucial that you hold each sound for at least 2 seconds and that you do not stop between the sounds. Blending with quick sounds is a little different. A quick sound at the end of a word is not so hard to pronounce.
Sad.
But when a word starts with a quick sound, you must be careful. Here, you must join the starting quick sound to the next long sound.
Cat. Cat. Cat.
Here are some other examples.
Dim. Tin.
In practice junction, you will have plenty of opportunity to practice getting to know the sounds that make reading possible. The Reading Mastery Program contains all the materials you will need. This set of books includes everything from teacher's guides to children's storybooks. Most important are the 3 teacher presentation books. They contain all the information you'll need to teach your reading lessons. The scripts for the lessons are written in colored type. The other directions are written in black. The presentation book also contains large letter displays for the children. The type is large enough that every child can see what's on the page.
Get ready? You get ready? Finding it ready?
Teachers need to practice the signals and scripts for the early lessons. Remember, there are 3 basic types of signals. Hand signals, where a finger is used to signal kids' unison responses. Presentation book signals, where the teacher points at symbols in the presentation book.
Get ready.
What word?
And workbook and storybook signals, where teachers use their voice and an audible signal such as a clap to signal students.
Yes. Next word.
In practice junction, there are numerous exercises to practice the signals and the scripts.
Let's say some sounds. Listen to the sound.
These can be practiced with coaches offering feedback or by yourself at home.
Hold up my finger. We're going to say,
In all signals,
get ready.
the words "get ready" are used to alert the children that they should respond.
Get ready. Get ready.
Get ready.
Get ready. Said get ready.
Make sure you are consistent in the way you say "get ready."
Get ready.
Get ready.
Get ready.
Stand.
Here are some extra tips for hand signals.
Yes.
Never signal when talking. Finish talking, then signal.
Get ready.
Don't mouth sounds when it's the student's turn to respond.
Yes. Say it.
Watch children when they respond to make sure they answer in unison. presentation book, teachers help children to connect sounds with symbols on the page. The presentation book must be held in a place where all the children can see it clearly, either to the side or directly in front of the teacher's chest. Be sure that your hand or arm does not block the vision of the children on the edges of the group.
Now, smart people, these words rhyme. Get ready.
Presentation book signals start with the teacher pointing to the big dot at the start of an arrow and pausing to allow the children to remember the sound. Then the teacher says, "Get ready."
Get ready.
And an instant later, her finger under the
My
sound.
turn again. Get ready. Get ready. Get ready. Get ready. Get ready.
At the end of each lesson, kids do workbook and storybook exercises. Here, because the children are looking down at their books, the teacher communicates using her voice and an audible signal such as a clap.
Everybody, finger on the first ball.
Here, you must not only give clear instructions, but also check that the children's fingers are where they should be.
Hear the sound and say it. Get ready.
What word?
For tasks where children sound out words, you clap for the first sound, then 2 seconds later, clap for the next sound.
What word? A. Yes, A. Next
Practice Junction will offer numerous opportunities for you to practice signals and scripts. These should be done first with your coach or trainer, and then at home by yourself.
Say the sound. Get ready. My
It
turn.
is very important that errors are corrected immediately. You will get an opportunity to practice some correction procedures in Practice Junction. In these corrections, you model,
My turn. Name.
then lead the children,
Sound it out with me. Get ready. Name. Again by yourself.
finally,
Get ready.
you test them.
What word? Name. Yes, name.
Here are some general tips when making corrections. Direct the correction to the group rather than the individual. This keeps students from feeling singled out. Keep the tone positive. After correcting an item, go back and firm every part of the task. At the end of a task, give individual turns to children who made errors, and make sure they are firm. If several children make errors during individual turns, assume that the group as a whole needs more practice on that particular skill, and return to the task later in the lesson.
This sounded.
An effective reading mastery teacher seamlessly transitions into a correction procedure. With practice, so will you.
All by yourself. Yes. Starting over. Get ready with sound. Yes.
Now, you are ready to go to Practice Junction to practice the sounds, blends, signals, and correction
All of
procedures.
these sounds without making a mistake.
After that, you will be ready to teach your children to
Here
read.
we go. We are going to learn to.
Okay, we are going to stop there with the video. I do want to just share that the version that we have in our district is an updated version, which is why their teacher's script was in red and ours is in blue, and the materials do look dated, but it's still the same process, it's still the same program. So I just wanted you guys to be able to see the signals in action and how you use the teacher guide and showing the pointing and just a kind of a nice overview of everything. My one little pet peeve is when they're doing the workbooks, they're still sitting in their little chairs. They don't have a table, which I'm wondering if they're just doing that for the presentation itself. Okay, so now we've covered reading mastery. We're going to go right on into corrective reading. You guys will probably notice as we go through corrective reading, you're like, this is really familiar to everything we just talked about. And you're right. It is the next step that way from Reading Mastery, Corrective Reading. They're sister programs. And so they have a very similar philosophy, very similar method. You're going to see lots of things that are the same between the two. So let's start in what is corrective reading? Well, corrective reading is a powerful direct instruction reading series that solves a wide range of problems for struggling readers. It is made up of explicit step-by-step lessons that are organized around two major strands, which may be used separately or together to customize instruction. So as Reading Mastery had the 3 strands, corrective reading only has 2. Who is corrective reading for? It is typically taught to students in grades 4 through 12 and even above. It can go up for adults. And students whose reading is characterized by misidentified words, confusion of similar words, word omission or insertions, lack of attention to punctuation, and poor comprehension. And I'm sure we are all picturing a handful of students here that would fit all of those pieces with their struggles with reading. So what are the strands of corrective reading? As I stated before, there are 2 strands, and then within those strands, there are 4 instructional levels to address a wide range of reading problems. So the 2 strands are decoding and comprehension. And then our instructional levels, we have level A, B1 and B2, and C. So the decoding strand, how do you know when or if a student needs decoding intervention? So students with decoding problems often make frequent word identification errors, add and omit words, confuse high-frequency words, have a poor grasp on that phoneme-grapheme relationship. They read at a slow rate, and they are unable to comprehend due to their inaccurate reading. Okay, so I have here the decoding strands and the different levels. Oh, sorry guys. I just like the visual component of this with the triangle and what it looks like for the different levels. So you can see level A is at the top, and it breaks down how many lessons are in level A. There's 65. There's level B1, level B2, and they each have 65 lessons. And then we have level C, which has 125 lessons. And I'm just going to go into a little bit more detail with each one, like what does that student look like that needs that level A? What does the student look like that needs that level C decoding? So for decoding level A, it is appropriate for students in grades 3 through high school who are extremely deficit in decoding skills. Excuse me. These students may recognize some words, but they do not have adequate strategies for accurate decoding. Decoding B1 is appropriate for most problem readers in grades 3 through 12. They guess at words. They have trouble reading words such as what, that, a, the, those high frequency or sight words when the words appear in a sentence context. They often read the synonym or printed words and are generally inconsistent in their reading. So that means they may read the text one day and they did a pretty decent job, and then they read it the next day and it is way off. So they're very, very inconsistent. Decoding B2 is appropriate for students in grades 4 through 12 who have some decoding problems, students who do not read at an adequate rate, students who tend to confuse words with similar spellings, and students who tend to make word guessing mistakes. And finally, decoding level C is appropriate for students who have mastered many basic reading skills, but who have trouble with multisyllabic words and typical textbook materials. And they have here a little bit less detail because it's on a triangle pyramid and you don't have room for all of that, all the information I just stated. but I think it gives you a nice overview of the breakdown between those levels. We're going to move now into our comprehension strand. And students with comprehension problems usually cannot follow multi-step directions, exhibit poor auditory memory and statement repetition skills. They have a vocabulary deficit, and they lack background knowledge. So here I have the same looking pyramid, but this time it is with our comprehension strand and the different levels. So once again, I'm going to go into a little bit more detail of what that looks like for each student. But I do want to share that with the comprehension strand, we have 2 tracks for the levels. So for example, a student may be placed in comprehension level A or comprehension level A fast cycle. So each one, they have comprehension level B1, comprehension level B1 fast cycle. So that is the difference between the decoding and the comprehension strands. So if a student is placed in comprehension A, they cannot repeat sentences that they hear. So they have trouble retaining and answering questions. These students are often unable to comprehend what they read because they don't understand the material when it is presented orally even. Students who place in comprehension B1 exhibit many of the deficits observed in students who are placed in comprehension A. They do lack some common basic information, such as showing how many or saying how many months are in a year. They are also deficit in thinking operations, and they have some trouble identifying how objects are the same. Students can only enter comprehension B2 after completing comprehension B1 or the B1 fast cycle. That is also different from the decoding, where students can be decoding B1 or decoding B2. Here, they have to complete comprehension B1 in order to go to comprehension B2. Students who are placed in that comprehension level C have already learned many skills. They are able to draw conclusions from evidence, they can make inferences, they respond to specific instruction, but their primary deficit are using all of those skills independently. So just like reading mastery, corrective reading also has placement tests. So now that we know all about the strands and the levels in a bit more detail, we're going to be, you always wonder, okay, but where do my kids fall? Where do I place them? How does that work? We have our placement test to assist with this. So you think I would learn. Let's check out a decoding placement test, that decoding strand. Very, very similar setup to the reading mastery placement test. The corrective reading one, it tells you preparation, what you need. You need copies, page 1551 of this guide, how to administer it. And then you go right into part 1 and you tell the student what to do. In blue is what you say. If the student omits a word, you mark an X, and it tells you exactly how to do the error analysis. If they add a word, how to do this. And again, if you're familiar with Dibble's testing, you guys know this. Let me show you what it looks like for the teacher. So here is our decoding placement test. We have part 1, and this is where you would mark the errors that the student makes. Part 2, 3, and 4. Now up here, they have our placement schedule. So for part 1, if there are 22 or more errors, you're going to go ahead and administer the part 2 test. And then here, if you have the student had 12 to 21 errors, but then there's a breakdown. If it took them more than 2 minutes, or if it was 2 minutes or less, then if it took them more than 2 minutes and they had that many of errors, you're going to start with level A, lesson 1 for decoding, and so on. It's just very easy to understand how to place students there. Let's check out a comprehension placement test. Same thing, it tells you how to assess this, what test 1 looks like, preparation, how to administer it, etc. And then it has our scoring. They have an answer key below. You count 1 error for each item. And then here's our breakdown. Students who make more than 7 errors go on to test 2. Students who make 7 or fewer errors take test 3. And then our program placement is here. And let me just show you what the test looks like as well. This one is quite longer because it is a comprehension. So this is what the test looks like. It's a black line master of test 1 and what the student would be completing. You're not to read anything to the student. This is all them reading. And then if you have to do test 2, what it looks like, etc. So what does a corrective reading lesson look like? They are typically about 45 minutes per lesson, and it is designed for smaller group sizes. And I just want to very quickly go in and let's look at a decoding lesson plan. What does that look like? And this is lesson 6 for decoding. And we are starting with word attack skills, and follows the same process. What is in blue is said out loud. And then exercise 2, you have a sound introduction. There they are. You say the sounds. It's very much follows that process of I say, we say, you say. Reading the words. And then here's an example of the workbook, like the spelling component. And again, that's a great assessment piece that you can use to see how students are maintaining and keeping up with the sounds that are taught. And we have our workbook, copying, matching sounds, and then that's the end of the lesson. Let's check out a comprehension lesson. This is lesson 52. Listen, pollution in the air increases every year. Say that statement, and then students repeat it. Then you say it again, and just the that comprehension component. Then we're going to go into definitions, a synonym. You know, here, what, yeah, well, you can't see where I'm pointing again. Number 5, consume. What does consume mean? Basic evidence, using facts. And we go, and this one has more exercises, but typically it's similar to the number of exercises from Reading Mastery. Each lesson might differ slightly just depending on what the topic is about. And then we go into our workbook exercises here. And you do it together. So there's an example of our comprehension lesson for this program. Okay, we're going to check out one more video about corrective reading. And as you can see, these are older students because corrective reading is targeted for our older students at upper elementary and middle and high school level. So let's look at how they are using corrective reading. What word? I promise you guys I've done this before. I just want to let you guys know that this is a decoding lesson.
The first word in part 2. What's the underlined part?
We.
What word?
Angrily.
Next word, underlined part?
Pretty.
What word?
Pretended.
Next underlined?
Really.
Word?
Already.
Next underlined?
Less.
Word?
Motionless.
Next underlined?
Needed.
Word?
Clear.
Touch part 3. We're going to talk about what those words mean. Touch word 1. What word?
Irritated.
When you're a little angry, you're irritated. Everybody, what's another way of saying she looks a little angry?
She looks irritated.
Touch word 2. What word?
Antics.
When somebody clowns around, the things that person does are called antics. Everybody, what do we call clowning behavior?
Antics.
Touch word 3. What word?
Expression.
The expression on your face is the type of look on your face. Everybody, what's another way of saying her face had a happy look?
Her face had a happy expression.
Nice.
Okay, well, that is the end of our presentation over reading mastery and corrective reading. I do want to say that this program, both of them work, but they only work when we teach them with fidelity. We have to follow, and sometimes people are like, well, it's boring, but you can add a pizzazz to it. You can make it your own, but we still have to continue to teach it with fidelity. And as I stated before, it's so easy to add in our CI3T bucks and positive reinforcement, but the growth that students make when it is done the right way is phenomenal. So I am so excited to work with each and every one of you. Please reach out to me if you have any questions. Reading is my jam. I'm so excited and happy that you guys are with us at Topeka Public Schools. Thank you so much.